Good morning, guys. Welcome to my unboxing and review of the high-grade GQuuuuuX Police Zaku. This is the second standard release for the brand new GQuuuuuX anime. This is a 2025 standard release that I got for about $25, which is a bit more expensive than the GQuuuuuX, and that itself was a pretty impressive model with a ton of parts separation and things like that. So I'm excited to build this kit and see what makes this 10 to 15% more expensive than the GQuuuuuX itself. So this is, of course, going to be a redesign of the iconic Zaku, but of course this military Zaku's been kind of given to the police force and kind of retuned for riot control and peacekeeping and things like that. So I really do like the color scheme on this. I'll say right now, I'm probably not going to be getting the standard Zaku II or Char Zaku II from GQuuuuuX. This is pretty much the only, I guess, variant of it that I plan on getting, this because this one's the most interesting and I really like the color scheme. Of course, on the front here, we get some very nice box art in that kind of typical modern high-grade painting style. I do really like the way GQuuuuuX looks with this almost like cyberpunky aesthetic with the way everything is kind of tinted like pink or magenta or whatever. It gives it a very striking art style. On the bottom, of course, we get the painted build in a bunch of different poses, showing off the articulation of this kit and its accessories, showing off the hand options, the baton this comes with, more articulation over here, the mono eye being movable, and of course all the accessories this comes with: Zaku machine gun, heat hawk, baton, 3 different hand options, and the shield. On the other side, we get the unpainted state of the kit, showing off that it looks pretty color accurate, it looks pretty good even without any kind of painting. So information on the story of GQuuuuuX here. So of course, getting right into it, inside the box we get 3 bags of runners, which is pretty typical for a more basic high grade, but again, this isn't really priced like it's a basic high grade. You expect those kits to be under $20, this is $25. Of course, getting right into it, we get this standard style GQuuuuuX high grade manual with a no background version of the box art here of the Police Zaku. On the bottom here, we get some information on I guess the development of the Police Zaku, or more like how it came to be in the police configuration, because underneath all of this paint and stuff, this is of course a 1-year war Zaku II. On the back here, we get a bunch of information we saw on the box, including more information on the accessories: the Zaku machine gun, the electric baton and shield, and of course the police siren lights on the shoulders, which are pretty cool. And then, of course, you will get our color guide here in Japanese and in English in full color, so you can pause now if you want to use these colors in any of your builds. So the manual will begin in full color and become black and white afterwards. Of course, you get our parts list here, fairly simple as far as high grades go. Of course, talking about basic Gunpla assembly, and then we get into the build, starting with the head. We're going top down for this one. It looks like it's going to be a pretty typical high grade Zaku II build, nothing really to comment on here. And then, of course, you get into the body, which again looks pretty typical. A lot of very nice parts layering here, which I really do like to see. Looks like we're going to be needing some color correcting stickers for things like the logo on the chest. So all pretty nice stuff as far as high grades go. I'm surprised with how, very similar to the GQuuuuuX, I'm surprised at how much parts layering they're able to cram in with how relatively little the parts count of this kit is. And then of course you get into your arms here. Looks like not a complete inner frame, but it looks pretty good nonetheless. Of course, attaching your police siren light on the top there. And then getting into the left arm here. Unlike most Zaku II designs, this, while being asymmetrical, doesn't have a spike on doesn't have spikes all over the left shoulder. Again, less militaristic, more peacekeepery. So I guess they don't want it to look as hostile as the military Zaku does. Getting into the waist, extremely simple build here. But of course, the GQuuuuuX Zaku doesn't have the rather large skirts that our typical Zaku II designs do, so you don't have to worry about that. Then we get into the legs, of course, not a complete inner frame, not really expecting it. Then you get into the feet. Then you get into the right leg, and it looks like you're going to be doing a ton of piping details or something there, attaching the very bulbous parts onto the legs there. Then, of course, assembling everything together, talking about mounting on an action base. Then you get into your accessories, which are fairly simple in typical high-grade fashion. These Zaku machine guns, literally 2 halves are sandwiched together, 1 part for the secondary handle, 1 part for the barrel, 1 part for the magazine. Then talking about the Zaku II holding it, talking about your heat hawk and electric baton, and then putting stickers on the shield and mounting the shield and the baton onto the arm. So pretty simple high grade, but they do manage to cram in a surprising amount of part separation with this relatively small parts count. So as for the contents of the bags, so inside the bags we get 8 runners, which sounds more than what the manual is showing, but again, a lot of these runners are quite small, containing only a couple of parts. So of course this is going to be a relatively simple high grade build. And then we're going to be getting this standard sticker style sheet here of marking decals for things like stripes, the large text on the shield, text that says police here, as well as a bunch of, I guess, unit markings if you want to have like a bunch of them as a police squad. And of course you get your mono eye sticker down here. But unfortunately, I do expect some stickers like the text and stuff to not look the greatest on this kit, because as you saw, this is using a darker color scheme. So of course the borders are going to be very apparent. So getting to the runners themselves. So of course, just like the GQuuuuuX, this is modern enough that I will not be using any polycasts whatsoever. So starting with runner A here, This, I believe it just says Zaku GQuuuuuX with a 2025 design date. These runners were printed in April of 2024. This is of course going to be a multicolor runner coming in 3 different colors. We get the police blue here of the main armor tone of the kit. We take a number of arm parts for things like the head, torso, hands, etc. We get clear red here for our sirens on the shoulders, and then we get a very dark gray, almost black color for things like power piping, as well as a number of auxiliary armor parts. Runner B here, still labeled Zaku GQuuuuuX, is going to contain a number of frame parts here in this very dark gray, almost black color. The parts for the waist, you see our hand parts here, you see a number of joint parts, and of course you see our feet here with this very like human shoe shaped feet here. Not really something you normally see, especially on a Zaku that in very typical ZEON design fashion normally has very kind of large rounded feet. This is a little unusual, and a number of thruster parts down here. Runner C here, still labeled Zaku GQuuuuuX, going to contain some more joint parts as well as a number of frame parts in a very dark gray, almost black color, as well as I think this is the shield. Runner D here going to be in the same blue as on Runner A. This is going to be most of the rest of the armor parts in this kit in the characteristic police blue. So you see a ton of armor parts for things like the shoulders, those balls that were on the leg, parts for the legs themselves, these like weird piping parts that were on the leg, and I think these squares are for the shoulders. Runner E going to be our accessory runner here, containing parts for our Zaku machine gun, the electric baton, and the heat hawk. Runner F, a single part here in a light lavender color, going to be I think a part for the torso, so this will have a bit of a two-tone thing going on, which will look very good. Runner G here, going to contain these 2 parts here, not exactly sure what these are for, and then H going to be in the same tone as G for a number of different accent parts for across the kit. So fairly simple runner list, but I am expecting this model to look quite good at the end of the day, so I will see you after the build. All right, welcome back. Here's the high-grade Police Zaku, all snap built, panel lined, and the included sticker-style decals applied. And I'm actually surprised at how, like, not terrible these sticker-style decals look. They did manage to cut the borders much closer to the actual decals being added, so they aren't as obnoxious. And I don't know what they did, but the borders are actually, like, less visible, even, like, even accounting for their size than a lot of other, like, say, real-grade sticker-style decals. So I'm really impressed with this, and I really hope that this style of sticker is what they use going forward for their sticker-style decals, because for the most part they are quite good. Getting into the build then, this is pretty much exactly what I was expecting in terms of it kind of being a min-maxed kit. The high-grade GQuuuuuX itself was very much the same, where it did a lot with relatively few parts, which really helps deliver a premium feel even for like Bandai's high grades for a relatively reasonable price. You can get this kit for around $24 in the US, which is a bit more expensive than the average, like, kind of older high grade, which sits around $20, but for what you get, I still think it's pretty worth it. There's a lot of parts layering here, especially in the torso. You see the two-tone thing going on between the very dark gray armor sections and the almost lavender-like sections, which is different from the police blue that the rest of the kit is molded in. Some parts are very simple, like the waist, but in general, there's some pretty decent layering here. It is still a high grade after all, so some parts like the forearm are just going to be 2 halves sandwiched together with some stuff in between, but especially in the legs, it gets reasonably involved. And I think it does help set this kit apart from a lot of other kits as a pretty unique build, especially with the way this kind of power piping kind of like pivots out and in to make room for these balls. I think they're supposed to be like propellant tanks or something that slot in to the side kind of behind the piping, and the piping flips back in to kind of latch it in place. Not really, but it feels like it is. In addition, there's a lock in the knee, which helps give the leg this very unique shape and really helps prevent any kind of like building errors that might be possible with a lot of other kits. Bandai's normally pretty good with that, where they have parts only able to go in one way. This kit really does exemplify that, with a lot of parts being kind of asymmetrical on the inside. So on the outside they may look the same, but on the inside they vary and cannot be inserted in the wrong way. That is done like a lot more than in a lot of other kits, which I wasn't really expecting, but I think the end result is quite a nice build. In terms of aesthetics then, in terms of color accuracy, this kit is nearly entirely color accurate. There are 2 major things I noticed, of course, one being the thrusters. Being a high grade, they do not have separate parts for the inside, so you will need to paint them red, which I did using a white undercoat and then just put red on top, because like I mentioned in some other videos, dark gray parts, the red doesn't really show up, so you want to do a white undercoat. So you're going to have these 5 thrusters on the back and this one on the crotch that need to have red on the inside. And the other major color inaccuracy I noticed was in the baton here, which is supposed to be in a much lighter gray than what was molded on the runner. I think it looks fine like this, so I didn't bother repainting it, but if you want it to be fully color accurate, you will need to repaint this in a lighter gray. Oh, there's actually a 3rd color inaccuracy that I forgot until just now. But on the Heat Hawk here, the blade is supposed to be in silver. The color guide on the back does mention the Heat Hawk is supposed to have a silver part, so I just painted that in with shine silver, and I think it looks all right. So apart from that, this kit is entirely color accurate, including all of the decal stickers that come in this kit. And as you can see, I did use almost all of them, apart from these special unit marking stickers down here, and the alternate, I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to be, stickers that go on the kit. You get two kinds. You get 412 and 418. I used 412, so the 418 ones are of course going to be extra on the sticker sheet. So before I talk about the general design of this kit, I'm going to go over quickly where these stickers are used. So stickers 1, 2, and 3 are going to be all of the small stripes here on this like piping section that goes all around these round spheres that are on the thighs. So of course you get all of these stripes that kind of wrap around. You do have to press them into the gap between the pipes to make them look natural. I do think they look good once you fully press them in and everything. Sticker 4 is of course going to be the mono eye in there. Stickers 5 and 6 are going to be the wraparound stickers on the arms. I think these don't look all that great because there's kind of a ledge that you need to wrap the sticker around, and then you need to press the sticker into and then fold it over and wrap it around. I really think it doesn't look all that great, and the sticker's a bit thin, so you can see a bit of gray poking through there, which I don't think looks the greatest. Honestly, I would just paint that in myself. Same thing applies for sticker 7, which is going to be these two large stripes here on the front of the leg. As you can see here, what I wasn't expecting to be able to happen, because this doesn't really happen on other Gundam stickers, even like the very long ones like these, is that you can actually get air bubbles trapped underneath that, which I wasn't expecting. So there's a couple trapped in there here, which don't look the greatest. This is another thing that it looks fine if you apply it properly, but I would honestly rather just paint in the stripe. Stickers 8 and 9 did not use. They are the numeric unit markings. So if you have like multiple of these, want to set up a squad, you can put the numbers here on this flat part of the shoulder to designate them as individual units. Sticker 10 is going to be the large hexagon here on the kit's right thigh on this ball here. Sticker 11 is going to be, of course, the police text that goes underneath it. Sticker 12 is going to be the hexagon marking that goes in the middle of the chest here. Sticker 13 is going to be the very large decal here on the forearm shield. You'll see more of this in the accessories section. Sticker 14 you get two of. There are these very small stripes for the forehead, and you can really see here what I was talking about, the sticker borders. Like normally these very tiny decals would look terrible on kits with very pronounced borders relative to the amount of space taken up by the actual marking itself, but here the borders like barely take up a little bit more than the stripe itself, which ends up looking surprisingly okay. They're still visible, they're just not obnoxious like in a lot of real grades. Sticker 15 you get for this decal here on the shoulder shield with this hexagon with 412 underneath it. You get another one with a hexagon with 418 underneath it, but again, I'm using the 412 marking, so I did not use that one. And then sticker 17 you get 3 of. For the 412 markings here, 2 of them are going to be going on the backs of the legs, and the third one is going to be going on the rounded part of the shoulder here. So yeah, overall the stickers look surprisingly okay. The stripes, you just need to keep in mind that you can't get air bubbles trapped underneath them, so you need to be just careful when you're applying them. But getting to the actual like visual language of the Zaku, there are parts I like and parts I don't. What I like is how this really does kind of convey that this is a former military Zaku that was of course modified to serve as a peacekeeping force. You can see it of course with the sirens on the shoulders. You can see it with the left shoulder that traditionally has a ton of spikes on it, but they of course removed that and just replaced them with these like bolts here to help them look, I guess, a little bit more peaceful and less militaristic with all of those spikes there. I do like the whole thing where they're incorporating parts of like the high mobility Zaku, incorporating like a fuel tanker system into the legs themselves with all of the thrusters coming out the back. It really helps this kit. It really helps this design look very mobile. I do like the head here, which is not super changed from a normal Zaku head, which might be why I like it, but this head design does look a little bit meaner and it's a little bit more sloped, and the angle of it's a little bit different, so I like that. And I do like the front armor here for the Zaku's legs. The forearms are also fine. What I don't like is in how everything's proportioned. This kit looks very kind of center heavy, if that makes any sense, because you see it has this extremely bulbous torso, it has these very thick thighs with the propellant tanks, but then very uncharacteristic of the Zaku, it tapers down the leg and gets thinner, where normally the Zaku's leg stays thick throughout, actually thickens up a little bit around the lower leg. Here you could see it thins out dramatically, and they have this almost like athletic like calf bulge thing which looks very organic and weird. In addition, the feet, like I mentioned in the unboxing section, it's very rare you see these very like human shoe like feet on a mobile suit. These are kind of weirding me out a little bit, but what that also means is because they're so small, this kit does have some balance issues, even with how kind of like not super over the top and crazy and unbalanced it would normally be if it had normal proportioned Zaku feet. These like smaller human shoe like feet really do have issues keeping this up and stable. In addition, while I do like the idea of the shoulders in general kind of filing down the spikes, putting the sirens on them, making them look like, well, peacekeeping forces, what I don't like is the proportions of them. The left shoulder is mostly okay. It's a bit smaller than a normal Zaku spike shoulder, but apart from that, it's fine. The shoulder shield, I do have an issue with. If you see my video on the Destiny Gundam, you know I really don't like excessively tiny shields, because again, these are supposed to be defensive armaments. Like, what is this protecting? Look at how small the surface area is. You're protecting the shoulder. that's it. You're only protecting the side of the shoulder. Unlike the normal Zaku shield, which fully drops down and covers the whole arm, so it covers everything, and you can use it, can like crouch down and use it as cover while it's reloading. It actually serves a practical purpose. On this kit, this shield is way too small to do so. I get that that's why the forearm shield is here, because you can mount it on either side. You can mount it here to make a faux Zaku shield where it covers up the whole arm, but it's supposed to be mounted on the other side, so I don't get it. I'm just not a fan of the very tiny shoulder shield, so this is a very kind of odd design for me. I really love the color scheme, I love the idea of it, but the actual execution I'm not the biggest fan of. Like a lot of other GQuuuuuX designs, it's very weird and odd. It's not for me, but I can definitely get it if you're a fan of this. So for a quick size and visual comparison, here's the high-grade Police Zaku next to a standard-sized high-grade, the high-grade Blue Destiny Unit 1, and a standard-ish Zaku, the high-grade Crew Cruise Doan's Island, Zaku II high mobility type that I took a look at a few days ago. So as you can see here, the high-grade Police Zaku is a hair shorter than the Blue Destiny here, which is shorter than it's supposed to be. In Universe's kit, this design is supposed to be 18.5 meters tall. In plastic form, it's the same size as the standard 18-meter tall Gundam. The Police Zaku here is supposed to be, I think, 17.5 meters tall. It stands at about the same head height as an 18-meter tall kit, so it is a bit taller than it's supposed to be, but I think that's fine. Just know that this will take up about an average amount of space on your shelf compared to the typical high-grade. Now, of course, visually, this really does point out what I was talking about earlier with the different proportions compared to a more normal Zaku II over here. You see the legs. This is the high mobility type, so the legs are more expanded than they normally would be on a typical Zaku. But you can see how odd the tapering on a Zaku's legs looks compared to the normal one. The arms, you can see, are relatively similar. It's just the shoulders that are very different. Again, look at the shoulder shield. Look at how it can actually be used as a defensive armament, how much space it covers up on the side of the kit, on the side of the mobile suit. And then look at this shoulder shield, and it's just so dinky and odd. I really don't like this shoulder shield. At some point, I might see if I can steal a normal Zaku shoulder shield, repaint it in police blue, and just slap it on this kit. Maybe see if I can modify it to put the police siren on it, but I really do not like the shoulder shield on this Zaku. So for accessories, here's the high-grade Police Zaku with everything it comes with. As you can see, this is a pretty bare-bones accessory spread. It comes with everything you would expect it to, but nothing more. There are no bonuses or goodies or anything like that included with this kit. So, of course, getting into the hand options first, this kit is going to have standard high-grade holding hands, one for each side. It is also going to have this kind of super open flat hand only for the left side. So you can use this either to like press down on the Zaku machine gun to look more natural in a, I guess, neutral pose or not firing pose. You can use this as a supporting hand for the machine gun. I want to see if you can use this as like a stop, you violated the law kind of hand. But apart from that, this is kind of interesting as far as open expressive hands go, and it's nice that it was included. You are, of course, going to get this kit's main lethal melee weapon, the Heat Hawk here. Not really much to say here. It's a pretty typical Heat Hawk. Unlike a lot of the other weirdness of this kit, the Heat Hawk was mostly immune from weird redesigns. Then, of course, you get this kit's main non-lethal melee option, the Electric Baton here. Of course, being a police mobile suit, it is going to have a police baton. Not really much to say. It is a single piece. Like I said earlier, it's not color accurate. You need it to be in a lighter shade of gray, and of course, when not in use, you can mount it on the inside of this forearm shield here, like so. So of course, the forearm shield here, again, also not really much to say, is basically a rectangle with a bit of a slope to it. It just attaches into the hole in the forearm and just acts like extra protection. It does look pretty visually striking with this very large decal on it, but not really much to say. You'll see it in the posing section. And then you get into the kit's one and only ranged weapon, the Zaku machine gun, which is a very modified version of a normal Zaku machine gun. As you can see here, it's quite compact. I do actually really like how this looks. I almost like it more than the normal Zaku machine gun. I don't know if that's sacrilegious, but I just like this more compact design rather than a traditional Zaku machine gun. This is the one from the high-grade Crew Cruise Doan's Island, Haimo Zaku, that you just saw. And it is a very kind of normal Zaku machine gun. As you can see, it's much longer. You can see it has a much longer stock with a bit of a curve here to properly mount onto the normal Zaku torso that this kit doesn't have. But a lot of the idea is still here. It has a large drum magazine. It has a secondary handle that flips out to the side. The Police Zaku's machine gun is lacking the scope of the normal Zaku machine gun, but it does also have this bit of a, I don't exactly know what this is, a bit of like a hand shield here to protect the grip, which is nice, and I do think it adds a little bit of extra, I guess, interesting geometry to the machine gun's mold. The drum magazine is removable, but you don't have any spares, so there's not really a reason to ever take this off. So yeah, this is a pretty solid looking machine gun, and I'm excited to see how it looks in the posing section. So overall, accessory wise, this includes pretty much everything you would expect it to, nothing more. In terms of articulation then, for the head, the Police Zaku can look up about that far, which is more than your typical Zaku head, because again, with how flat the head is, normally the neck articulation is very minimal. In terms of a downward look, it can look down into its own chest, which is pretty surprising. The mono eye can also articulate, very similar to a lot of other high-grade Zakus, including the Hymo Zaku I took a look at earlier. I'm just taking the head off to make this easier. You can see there's a bit of a switch down here. The eye can rotate about 45 degrees to either side. So you can have the Zaku like glaring and looking mean, and it can look at whatever target it's, well, targeting. So that's always a nice inclusion. The head can also 360 about the ball joint. Just be careful when you collide with these armor parts going from the shoulder into the torso. For the shoulder then, for a forward swing, these armor plates will move a little bit like the sides of the torso on the Hymo Zaku II, but of course the end result shoulder swing is pretty minor. It's a little disappointing, especially compared to the kit I took a look at a few days ago. The shoulder can also articulate independently of the arm and rock back and forth a little bit. In terms of a side raise, you will get barely more than 45 degrees, which is pretty disappointing. The lack of articulation here is really hurting this kit. It can, of course, 360. You get full rotation in the upper bicep, as you would expect. A single joint in the elbow will give about 135 degrees for a bend. Same thing as the high-grade GQuuuuuX, if you've seen my video on that. And, of course, the wrist is going to be on a ball joint, which will do ball joint things. In the torso then, for ab crunch, you will get a minor forward ab crunch before, of course, this very kind of thick midsection here will collide with the crotch armor. And you will get an extremely nice backwards ab crunch, which I wasn't really expecting. That does look pretty good, but this pretty much doesn't have a backpack, so there's nothing really to collide with the waist armor. And it, of course, can 360, just be careful your hands don't collide with all of this piping stuff in the thighs. You will get a minor side to side crunch as well. In the crotch, there are no skirts to speak of, so nothing really to say about that. The thrusters on the waist unit can rotate the back way more than the front, so on the back you have all this play, all this movement. In the front you get very little. In terms of kicks then, the lack of skirts does mean that this kit can't get more than a 90-degree kick forwards, more than a 90-degree kick backwards, which is pretty nice. Normally the back kicks on kits are pretty inhibited by the back skirts. Fortunately though, for side raises, you get 45 degrees max, as you can see from this very funky thigh design. You will get a very minimal side raise before it will want to collide with the waist. Of course, these main thrusters on the backs of the thighs can move around on ball joints, as you would expect. You get a double bend in the knee, which once you move the thrusters out of the way, does enable a 180-degree bend, which is very nice. I was not expecting that out of this extremely thick thigh design. In the ankles, you have a bit of an IBO thing going on, where the entire thing can tilt to the side almost 90 degrees either way. It can, of course, 360 about the ball joint. In terms of toe raises, you can drop it a minor amount and raise it a surprisingly high amount. There's, of course, no toe separation. So overall, articulation is a bit disappointing in the arms, but surprisingly good in the legs, kind of the inverse of what happened with the high-grade KEMMEI Island Zaku II Hymo type that I took a look at a few days ago. So let's see the articulation in action and some poses. So getting the high-grade Police Gundam into a bit of a spin here, starting with the usual running and gunning pose, it holding the forearm shield out in front of it and wielding the electric baton out to the side. It's like charging in, about to dish out some non-lethal suppression on a mobile suit, and first off, I am very surprised that this kit can even pull off this pose. If you remember from the unboxing, I was already having concerns about this kit having balance issues with how small the feet were, and I did note some balance problems earlier in the video, I believe. So I was very impressed that this could even pull off this pose. Granted, this doesn't really look like a running pose, looks more like a trot, but I think that's more fitting for a kind of peacekeeping mobile suit rather than full-on sprinting about to bash someone's head in. This definitely does look a lot better than a full-on running pose, especially with the very human-shaped feet. So I'm not too upset about the, I guess, lack of dynamicism with this pose. But this kit definitely does look really great on the ground. As a police unit, as a peacekeeping unit, it definitely does look at home on the ground, especially with the I guess more like heavy-duty gear aesthetic of this kit, even though it has all those thrusters on the bottom. These shoulders and stuff very much give heavy-duty, should-be-on-the-ground vibes. This is definitely a kit I would consider posing on the ground, maybe doing something similar to this, maybe with the Heat Hawk or something, but this is about one of the only poses I would consider actually using the electric baton in, besides something like you get a bunch of them standing into like a line, and then holding out the electric batons to like block out an area, act like a wall. But as a solo unit, I don't think the electric baton is all that interesting as an option, so this is about the only thing I would pose it doing. Also, the forearm shield. I like the general design of it, I just wish it was bigger, because as like a practical defensive option, having it be so small, basically only cover the forearm, seems a little bit ridiculous to me. I'm not really a fan of it, especially because it's not like a C design where it has beam shields or whatever. So, decent pose. Would consider doing this on the shelf if I have this as a solo unit. Now to get the Police Zaku into a crouching pose, here it is on one of the poses shown in like all the promo material and on the box and all that. Here it is crouching, kind of holding down the Zaku machine gun just kind of at the ready, and this is definitely a pose that I would consider having this kit doing on the shelf. I think the Police Zaku really does shine less when it's in the middle of doing something like super dynamic or performing something or doing some crazy attack, but rather just kind of being at the ready, because again, it's a peacekeeping mobile suit. While you can pose it doing cool stuff, I think just having it kind of existing and being there and being ready for action but not necessarily engaging in it is definitely a pretty good way to display the kit. Especially with how kind of lackluster the defensive and offensive options for this kit are. The Zaku machine gun, while I do like the compact design, isn't necessarily the craziest thing in the world to show this kit firing. The shoulder shield and the forearm shield are both way too small to effectively do any kind of defensive pose, so I think just having the kit kind of on standby at the ready is the best way to display it. This kit can also crouch very well, no real surprise. All of the weight of this kit is going to be pretty concentrated in like the torso and the thighs, given how like large they are in design. So this kit doesn't really have any balance issues that would prohibit it from crouching naturally. In addition, the open expressive hand here does look very good, kind of again resting atop the Zaku machine gun, just showing that the Police Zaku is on standby and kind of ready to go at any given moment. I'll probably be saying this a lot. This kind of at the ready, not currently engaged in combat pose is where the Police Zaku really does shine, in my opinion, and this is something I would consider posing this kit doing on the shelf. Now showing off the kit in the air firing its main ranged weapon, here it is with the Zaku machine gun. This is a very kind of typical aerial Zaku pose that you see in a lot of promo material, where it's flying downwards in a kind of wide-legged pose. It's either descending from a leap or flying backwards, depending on the kit. Like the High-Mo Zaku, they'll show it zipping off through space, firing as it retreats, while normal Zakus, while they're in the air, this is as they're like descending downwards, they're like laying down fire. And that's what this kit is doing. It's in the middle of a leap, firing the Zaku machine gun forward, and it was a bit of a pain to get this kit to hold the Zaku machine gun two-handed. The wrists were a little bit stiff, so every time I was trying to adjust the left hand to kind of get it gripping the secondary handle, it would kind of like wedge the back of the hand off, and that was a whole mess trying to find it again. In addition, you can't really have the handle out fully 90 degrees like horizontally like you would for a fully dynamic pose. You have to angle it at this kind of extreme angle forward, so I don't think it looks the most natural. It looks okay, and definitely if you're having this kit firing the Zaku machine gun, it can actually pull it off one-handed and it looks fine because of how compact this version of the Zaku machine gun is, but two-handed definitely looks the best in terms of portraying the stability and weight of the weapon. In addition, I think the forearm shield, this is pretty much the only case where I would like it this small rather than having a more practical, larger defensive option, just because it is working kind of less defensively and more dynamically with this kit performing an offensive action. This is a decent pose. This is about the only actual in-combat pose I would consider this kit doing on the shelf. It's pretty cool, and it does work with most Zaku variants, including this one. I think all of the thrusters and the legs definitely help this kit look at home if in the air, if you decide to put it there, but again, personally I would prefer having it on the ground in a at the ready but not currently engaged in combat pose. So, in conclusion, while I get the spinning around in the air with the Heat Hawk, not really much to say about it. It's a Heat Hawk. It does everything you would expect it to. It just looks fine. I did paint in the edge and shine silver to help it pop a little bit more because, again, in the manual and the color guide it says the blade of the Heat Hawk is supposed to have a silver part, so as it spins around, in conclusion, the high-grade Police Zaku is certainly an interesting kit. It's a very unique take on the Zaku, and I think if you get any single GQuuuuuX Zaku kit, this should be the one, because the other two Zakus are pretty much just going to be recolors of this that include some extra accessories, namely the Zaku bazooka that this kit lacks, because again, peacekeeping mobile suit shouldn't really have a bazooka. Maybe if they make I think there's like a heavy-duty riot variant of the Police Zaku, maybe that they'll give extra weapons, but for this kit, really, all you see is what you get. You get a Heat Hawk, you get an electric baton, and you get the Zaku machine gun you saw earlier. The build for this kit is certainly interesting. A lot of the stickers are pretty tedious to put on, and they do run into the issue that I mentioned earlier that a lot of other kits don't really have, where air bubbles can get trapped underneath the large stripes, particularly the ones on the legs, very easily. In addition, these small stripes on the kind of piping framework thing around I think they're propellant tanks on the thighs. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But those thin stripes are a bit tedious to put on, and I'm not the biggest fan of them. And while they did do plenty of work on the stickers to kind of thin the borders out and make them more transparent so that they aren't very apparent on this darker color scheme, and they do actually look way better than I was expecting them to. There are some cases, like in the forearm shield as it spins around, where the geometry of it does mean that some air is going to be trapped in between the sticker and the surface no matter what, so that the discoloration from the sticker itself is very apparent on the forearm shield. It's less obnoxious because the sticker pretty much covers the whole shield surface, but it's still noticeable and kind of annoying in my opinion. The build is kind of unconventional, very much in line with what we saw with the high-grade GQuuuuuuX back when I did that video in I think February. But it's not unpleasant by any means. This build is fine, it's really just the stickers that are a bit annoying. In terms of aesthetics then, this is where this kit is at its most unique, because, well, I mean, just look at it. It's a very interesting take on the Zaku, I'll say that much. Normally with a Zaku you have very kind of bulbous legs, you have big shoulders, thick arms, and a torso that's, I guess, a bit scrunched up. This kit has a very bulbous torso, like thunder thighs, with a very unconventional lower leg setup for a Zaku that tapers into a very thin section. The calves are almost like muscular, they're very bulbous, it's kind of odd to look at, and the feet are an incredibly unconventional shape where it's mimicking like human shoes or boots, which again, very odd. Normally have very big oval feet. This kit does not have that, and because of it, it does suffer from some balance issues. And as you can see, here's the spins around in a grounded melee pose. The limited leg articulation, where they can't really rotate out to the side that much, really hinders how dynamic you can get this kit in on the ground, which really reinforces what I was saying earlier. This kit looks its best less when it's doing something dynamic, but more when it's on standby at the ready to do something at a moment's notice. Because again, I think the theming of this mobile suit really does carry the design a lot. I love the idea of a peacekeeping mobile suit because we don't really see it all that often. A lot of Gundam mobile suits are really very fittingly designed as military machines, weapons of war. Seeing one kind of retuned as a peacekeeping mobile suit is interesting. I like that they shaved off the spikes on the shoulders, like the addition of the sirens. I like the police color scheme. All of it is really interesting to me, and I think that may be pretty much the only reason why I do kind of like the Police Zaku. Less so for the actual Zaku itself, more so for how they retooled a very iconic design to act like a peacekeeping mobile suit. So aesthetically, I really think that's where this kit shines. In terms of accessories, this kit is pretty bare bones. You really only get the forearm shield, you get a heat hawk, you get electric baton, you get the Zaku machine gun, and you get one extra hand option. That is it. But I don't really think people were expecting much more. The other thing I would say is really missing from this kit are extra hand options, but apart from that, not really that big a deal. Color accuracy is mostly good on this kit, with the only exceptions being the silver part on the heat hawk and the red in the thrusters on the back need to be painted in, but that's simple enough to do, and it's really not something I'm going to hold that much against it, because again, GQuuuuuuX designs are very busy. I was expecting some more stuff to be color inaccurate on this kit, but it's very nice that they included what they did, even including like the two-tone armor stuff on the chest. That's awesome. In terms of articulation, this kit really does suffer quite a bit, especially in the legs. While it does have a very nice knee bend, the lack of articulation in the thighs really limits what you can do on the ground. If you're going to pose this kit doing anything super dynamic, I would recommend just having an action base at the ready for this kit, because any kind of dynamicism on the ground is mostly lost. The most you can get is that kind of trotting pose you saw at the very beginning of the posing section. Anything beyond that, this kit does kind of struggle with. So, would I recommend this kit? Yes, solely for the uniqueness of it. I think as far as kits go, this is fairly solid. Really, it falters in a couple of different points, namely in the articulation. This kit, again, really struggles to pull off anything dynamic on the ground. But if you get an action base, get this kit in the air, or if you just have this kit on like doing a standby pose on the ground, it's mostly fine. It's incredibly unique, which is why I think it does have a lot of value for it, and for about $24, I think it's a little bit overpriced for what you get, but I still think it's a pretty decent kit in its own right. So if you were to get any Zaku from GQuuuuuuX, I would recommend you get this one purely for the unique theming of it. I think it gives it a lot more value compared to its contemporaries. So that was my review of the high-grade Police Zaku. Pretty polarizing design, but I do really like the idea of it. What do you think of this kit? Let me know in the comments below. If you like videos like these, make sure to sub and hit the notification bell. If you like this video, give it a like, and I'll see you next time with the high-grade Requiem for Vengeance Zaku II Solari. I'll see you then.